I don't want to, as you say, it's not about claiming like, oh, I have found the real authentic self behind all the parts. But I believe that the more work I do, the closer and closer I come to it. And how I differentiate what would be called the more authentic self underneath this pattern is when I get impulses that comes more from love, from creativity, from spontaneity, as opposed to coming from fear.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Lee. We know each other mostly from the burner scene here in Scandinavia and that kind of community. And I've sort of been peripherally connected to some of the work you do, but I don't think I've ever been to a full workshop with you. So I'm curious to hear more about your work, because my sense is that there is significant overlap between the stuff that we do and the stuff that interests me, but I don't really know. So I'm excited to get into that. And I'm also excited about hearing your story. Like I really like this sort of, what is it that drives us into the stuff that we then get more or less obsessively into, or at least that's my story. So yeah, maybe you can start off by just saying a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do, and then how did you get into this stuff?
So yeah, my name is Tadaa, if you who don't know me, and nowadays my main focus and body of work is called Grow Up, working with attachment and either inner adulthood or grown up adult consciousness, and understanding how our unresolved childhood patterns and younger parts are very often unconsciously driving both our decisions, our actions, choices of relationships, paths of lives. And when we fall back more into what I have learned to call the midline, my center, we get more choice, and life becomes easier, more relaxing, and also pleasurable. But what caught me in your question was like what we get obsessed with, and I'm like, oh, I've been obsessed with so many things until I ended up what I am facilitating right now. So how did I get into it? I think it's interesting to start with the aspect of, some kind of conscious relating togetherness aspect that we have as humans, and especially for this podcast, which is connected to leaders within relating, and therefore to share my first experience of some kind of conscious community, which was the church that I went to when I was 15. And it's called Rättviks Stiftsgård, and it was a very, I can say today, a very modern, conscious, spiritual community, in the sense that it was less about the Bible and more about being human, and everything that was connected to maybe Jesus or God was more translated into how we treat each other as young people and learn about growing up. And there was a lot of play, a lot of hugging, a lot of singing, and to a degree, a lot of similar aspects to conscious communities that I go to today. And that was my first obsession. And I got people, when I get obsessed, I pull people in. So I got my best friends from Gothenburg to travel all the way up to Dalarna to experience this magical place where everybody was hugging and singing together. And I was in that addiction, you could say, for 3 years until I was 18. Then I was an exchange student in Brazil, which became a second addiction. And Brazil represented another kind of togetherness. The culture in most parts of Brazil is very family-based, very music-based, very joyous, hugging, everybody are welcome, and long days of churrasco, barbecue, where you just, grill food all day, play cards, drink beer, and hug and have fun with grandma and auntie and the kids, and there's a big family feeling was something that also awoken this kind of, why don't we live more in generations and together, and then the carnivals and all the music and seeing the kids, playing the drums, and the older playing the drums in the samba aspects, and it was like, wow, this is something that we are missing now in Sweden. And then I moved back to Sweden, and let's jump forward to I would now then call my third addiction, which was that I started to dance Lindy Hop and swing dancing. And this addiction made me not go back to the Christian camp. It put a little bit Brazil on pause, and then I went to this dance camp called Harang for the next 7 years or something, 5 weeks per summer, where people dance together. And they had their grandfather, who's not alive today, was called Frankie Manning, and he said, if all the people danced, there would be no wars. And he said that, what if every dance is a 3-minute love song? And today, with a different kind of glasses and consciousness of spirituality, I can see how big of an opening that was, because it is a moment of presence. Who, no matter how I have in front of me, I take their hand and we're going to dance. I don't speak the same language, and I don't know where you're from. I don't know, there's no triggers and judgment of personality, except for how we meet in the music and in the rhythm. So I became a dance teacher, and it was very much about sharing this oneness that you can achieve through movement and dance, and that you can enjoy anybody when you're dancing together, and any kind of music, if you allow yourself to become present. And I think my first spiritual kind of awakening was when I realized that, what if I could be the one I am when I dance, also when I'm not dancing? Because until this point, I needed to dance to get into this connected, playful feeling, and then you step out of it, and then there's a little bit of stiffness and the old kind of norms on how you speak, and my head would start to zoom in again with thoughts, and so I needed to dance 5 times a week. And around this time, I moved to Mozambique, and that would be another obsession. And the African spirit, if Brazil was like beginners, we then, the Christian camp was beginners, Brazil intermediate, then Mozambique is like the advanced stuff. Because for many reasons, but because they live so connected to the community, to the earth, and to the slowness, and to rhythm and music in first hand before things that we do. So just to share that again. So in the West, I perceive it's like, why am I speaking to you? Where are we going? What are we doing? And then we can relax and, connect. And for them, it's the opposite. First you connect. This is another human being. So you cannot say, excuse me, where's the bank? You say, bon dia, good morning, how are you? And then you connect on a relational level. Now I can see there's a co-regulation happening. It's a scanning of, are you safe? I am safe. We're actually being pushed a little bit more into the midline, away from our survival states. And I see you as a human. And from there, I can ask, what are we going to do today, or the next thing? And it really became a strong mirror on my own rat race, or a whole Scandinavia's rat race, or the Western's rat race. Because when we are rushing through and not really connecting with each other the way we do here, it's difficult to see it, because we're all doing it. So then if I just, slow down a little bit more than others, I'm like, whoo, I'm so good at slowing down and connecting. And then you go to Africa and you're like, okay, then there's a different level. So I received a lot of straight feedback from my friends and community down there. I was teaching Lindy Hop, I was creating projects and learning how to dance traditional African dance and or Mozambican dance. And it was so often that they just mirrored that I'm always on my way somewhere. Like, why are you rushing? Where are you going? Why are you getting so agitated about small things? I remember me and my friend losing our phones at the same time. I had money to buy a new phone. I had a backup of my phone. I also had a camera and a computer. And he lost his phone, didn't have any money to buy a new one, no camera, no computer, no backup, nothing. And he's more chill than I am. So there's a lot of these things were mirrored of what I, in the language that I have today, is overreactions from our pattern. So we are so used to being in control. So even the things that are not so big happen, our system goes into hyperactivation unnecessarily because of unresolved stress from the past. And I believe that we in the Western world, we have a much higher tendency of storing past things than in other more indigenous and more earth-based communities. And not because they have less trauma, but because of the capacity of letting go and clean out old stuff and become present again has remained much more there. And I think that's why now in the West we are so eager and obsessed, talking about that word, with other cultures than our own, because they have something. So we go to India, we go to South America, we go to Africa because they have something that we don't. And the journey is not to master their ways, but to use that as a mirror to see, okay, what did we lose, and what are the strengths that we have also within our own ancestry and our own connections from where we come from. So on this journey of having these obsessions on the outside in different ways, and then Burning Man was another obsession where everybody get to be who they want to be, and radical expression and psychedelic aspects, and but in the end it also took me back to my own family system, to my own homeland, and like, okay. And Kenyan boyfriend of mine said, well, before you talk to our ancestors, shouldn't you talk to your own? When I was studying shamanism and other aspects in other parts of the world. And so I'm going to come back to your question, what is it that drives us? And I think also I come from a family who have actually, to be a Swedish family, been really, really open to having visitors, guests, celebrations, people over. My father is an artist and an opera singer and entertainer, and he can stand in front of an audience, whether there are 3,000 people or 60 people at the birthday party, and just change the atmosphere with a poem, with a song, and people suddenly shed a tear. And also creating this kind of oneness, you could say, or shift in presence that happens when everybody tap into the same reality and a kind of also somatic safety within. So that was like, yeah, it's also that it's in my family system to be this person who facilitates safer connection, and remember to be joyful and loving to each other, even in the midst of difficult moments in the world or in our own lives. And I think that is a good mirror of what the grow up work is today, that nor am I anymore doing focus on pleasure only, which I didn't speak about so much now, but before I came to the grow up, my work was a lot of focused on sexuality and tantra and higher states of consciousness, and a little bit more learning how to achieve pleasurable states. And then going through that, when the more you expand, the more the shit, as we say, comes up, or the unresolved stuff from underneath. And that took me into the grow up path, which is more than, okay, expansion is nice, but I need to be able to hold everything in life, and not live just from expansion. But to finish my sentence there, that the grow up approach and my life view today is that expansion and the joy, community, and the play is equally important as meeting what is difficult in life. And I see a lot of people either getting stuck in chasing the pleasure and pushing aside what is difficult, and then one more party, one more work project, one more whatever it is, because I cannot feel. Or you get into the place like, okay, I have to fix myself before I can feel good, and then more therapy, more courses, and that also becomes a loop. So my work today is a lot about finding enjoyment and okayness in the present moment, seeing that most of the stuff that I experience as triggers or challenges are actually not so big, and are mostly repetitions of patterns that lives inside of me, and then enjoy life, and then to find a balance with meeting what is difficult, and then coming back to enjoyment, relaxation, especially now having a child. So I'm also a mom. I didn't say that in the presentation. And the Lotus is 7 months, just over. And I think if we're in a place, especially it's common in a lot of conscious communities, if it becomes too much process, then where is the relaxation and the enjoyment of life? It's just digging and digging and digging and making process out of everything. And I master processes that way because I got obsessed with process and 24/7 therapy. Everything was therapy. And moved out that hype and obsession, and yeah, a little bit more of a balance of doing a little bit of everything. Yeah, drama-free life and nice connections. And the more relaxed I become, the more I can use the strength. I have a lot of strength, a lot of energy. I can really focus it. And I believe a lot of people could do great things in this world. But if you have drama in the relationship and you struggle with keeping your to-dos and house tidy, and all of this energy goes into small things, not learning how to channel the energy, then we cannot do great things in life. So it's also, I think that is for me an important aspect also, to use my energy wisely in this world. Yeah, I think that was a good summary. You said feel free to speak about yourself for half an hour. I think that's almost what I did, and yeah, here we are today. And I think I'm so grateful of my different obsessions, because each obsession in a way was, sometimes you need to really nerd yourself into something to get the piece you need to learn out from it. And in that moment you get a bit blind, you think that this is the solution to everything, and then you grow up a little bit and you're like, oh no, it was just one piece, and then you add the next piece, and then all of these pieces have also allowed me to be ready to become a mother, and it's such a relief that I have done so much work with myself before becoming a mother. And I find it actually I feel almost guilty to say it, but I sleep well, and it's nice and it's easy, and I can deal with the emotional overwhelm that comes sometimes, and it's not hard. Children are not hard, but it's hard to be a human. So if it's difficult to be me, then having a child will be hard, but it's easy to be me, so then having a child is not hard.
I'd like to hear more about the work you're doing now. Like, what does it look like, and what, yeah, maybe mostly what it looks like first, then we can maybe go into what the experience is for the people who come to your stuff is.
Yeah, so what it looks like, the structure of it is a membership program that I run weekly online, and then I teach at festivals, and I teach at individual workshops, and I host my own retreats. But if we look at more what it looks like as a community and a body of work, it is a practice of noticing where I am in myself in terms of nervous system. Am I in fight and flight, stress? Am I a bit freeze? Am I a little bit dissociated? And uncouple the reason a lot, because it's like we think like, okay, I am upset because my boss at work, or it is because I have a child and I haven't slept. So we are very stuck in why we feel in a certain way. And the more we just notice what it actually is somatically, sensation wise, nervous system wise, we can start to shift how we feel on the inside and the outside being exactly the same. When people said, no, I'm exhausted because I had blah, 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 blah. And then exhaustion is an overwhelm that it's not necessarily just tiredness. So if I learn that I'm a bit overwhelmed, I'm a little bit in a collapse state, what are the somatic tools and ways that I can move out of that state and become more present, and then I can take different choices. And this is what I then call the grow up. It is that I moving out of patterns, and I come back to my center line, to my midline. And people in the community, we practice. I show like this, if you're just listening, but I have two arms up like two trees. That is me when I can stay in my center. And if I twist my arms together like this, then I'm more enmeshed with people and with situations. So I don't stand in myself when somebody else is stressed or sad and I get pulled into it. When work is stressed, I bring my own personality, my value, who I am into it. So I entangle myself with everything in life all the time. And I don't see myself as separate. And I think for especially people in the conscious world, who are a lot in these kind of relating, the oneness place is the desirable place. And I believe that not enough people teach the individuation process, which needs to happen when we are a child, because we're born in the oneness state. We don't know the difference between myself and my mom and everything around us. And if we are only in the oneness state, we don't have any boundaries. We don't have an own will. I don't know the difference between you and me. And I can see a lot of people in conscious communities in the beginning, like blossoming and like oneness, and I feel I belong and like woo, and then after a while they lose themselves. So this is what I call, or what can be called, enmeshment. And what is it to move out, and I can still belong and be in the togetherness of the universe, the community, the family, the circle, whatever it is, and I have my own center, my own being. And it seems simple, but I actually know a lot of people don't even know what it actually feels like. Because a lot of people live, either I'm in connection with people, and then I have to put myself aside to be in connection, and then to find myself, I move out. And then I take my forest walk and I do my breath work, and then I jump in between. But there's actually another state where I can be in myself and be in connection at the same time. And it is more advanced work than it seems. And then it sounds, I would say.
It sounds similar to what some people speak to when they speak to sovereignty, like developing sovereignty or self-leadership, or
yeah,
Robert Keegan speaking to moving from socialization to self-authoring, something like that.
Yeah, it's not that I have invented something new.
mm,
I just call it grow up in the norm that I have studied. They call it the adult consciousness. In parts work, they call it the self, and you have the other terms for Keegan. I think just it's just harder to experience it than it is to explain it. So we have all these theories that explain that this is what it's like, but
mm.
to actually to find it somatically and live from that place is a more longer journey.
Yeah, it sounds like an well art form or practice uh,
Yeah,
more
yeah,
than a theory. And yeah, and I'm interested in that how like can we get closer to that? What is the work here? Like how does the work look? Because I imagine there's quite a lot of nuance in this. Like it's not an either or, at least not in my experience. That it's like it's there's an attainment here. That would be how I hold it, that I can get closer and closer to being able to stand in myself, be autonomous or independent, and be interdependent at the same time.
yeah.
But for me at least, it keeps slipping. It's like
Mm-hmm.
when the pendulum in me swings towards independence, I do also tend to become distant
Yeah,
to a certain level, and when it swings towards longing for interdependence or connection in a particular form, there is some kind of enmeshment happening, and at
yeah.
least it's my experience that the work never ends, kind of. So I'm curious how you hold that, and how do you support yourself and others in getting
In that,
closer to the
yeah.
center.
Well, one is to understand the pendulum that you're speaking about. That is a natural way. Like we never really just hit the midline. But in my work, when we are working with understanding exactly where a particular behavior come from, then I don't need to swing over to the other side. Then I go out from that part and I practice coming back to the midline. So instead of swinging back and forth until I end up in the middle, I practice what the middle feels like. So take your example, I really long for connection. So then the question is, okay, so how old do I become when I long for connection? And is this only a grown up part longing for another human? Or is it a child part in me that needs something? Because that is the part that makes us pull too much in and lose ourselves. Because when we're a child, I rather lose myself to stay connected because of survival. So then I can identify also in my body this part in me and sense it and like, okay, this is my old wounding coming up. And then I can take care of that separately. And then when I connect to my partner, I'm meeting in a less enmeshed place and I meet more in a grown up, we want to be close place. And then the opposite way around, when it's like, okay, I really need space. Then if I pause there, is it that, do I just follow my impulse and take the space or I pause and say, okay, the part of me that needs the space, how old do I become? What did I really need? And why am I feeling this way? And why am I, rushing in to needing space as if something is almost dangerous? This is how it can easily feel when you have been enmeshed or you need your space. And then you pause there and then you notice the part and that got pulled into the family drama or had to take care of your sibling or your mom that was sick and there was no space for you to exist, so you felt like that. And this will come up every time with your partner even though it has nothing to do with here and now. And in this way, I find that we can we create the map. We kind of wake up to our all different responses and understand where they come from, and then I can notice them, and then I choose to not move into it. And then the more I practice feeling what it's like to be outside of the entanglement, the easier it is to not get as hijacked from the different parts. And then the more things that are intense in life that happens, more stuff will come up. So it can either be that something somebody gets sick or something struggling is happening, and then it gets really intense. But I come into a new relationship, I fall in love, I open up. So expansion, or I go to a tantra festival and everything like heart open, more stuff will come to the surface. So the more capacity we have, the more stuff comes. And as you say, we never get done. But can I practice being as present as I can in the here and now, and notice what it is that's coming up, and then slowly I expand and I expand. Yeah, and then I grow. So I feel less of pendulum and more of this midline increasing, and they're like, oops, I lost myself again, come back. Oops, I lost myself. Okay, where am I?
Yeah, cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
From your perspective?
Yeah, I think for me, like the way I think about this is sort of very based on my Tai Chi practice, and where we are also seeking this like perfect central equilibrium that is sort of fully responsive to the world. So you could say fully in, fully presencing myself and fully listening, moving with at the same time. But then from practicing that pretty extensively, I'm also very aware that that is a very, very high attainment. So I'm very careful to say for myself that I'm actually doing it. It's more like I'm trying to do that more, and it has definitely changed my life to practice, and I feel more at ease in the world than I ever have. And I imagine that that is similar to what you're speaking to. This like things don't become as dramatic, as problematic than they did 20 years ago. And it's certainly not like there's no drama in my life or no problems in my life. I just relate to them in a slightly different way.
Yeah. No, it's very similar, and I really enjoy Tai Chi or Qigong, and I use it in my practice as well. For this explanation that you just gave, to be able to be responsive in the here and now, and then if I say like, oh, I'm so grown up, as you said, like you're careful to say that you're actually there, and the way I do it is to ask myself, can I be the grown up or in the present moment in relationship to a specific situation? So it's, instead of saying like, okay, I'm so grown up and now I finally found it, I can say, okay, I have a trigger with my partner, and then I can take from that perspective what's happening in myself now, and can I take the perspective and we resolve it calmly. And then I can say, I was in my grown up, right now I am in my grown up in relationship to this particular thing. I'm not done, but then I can use it more as a daily practice. So I get irritated because the bus is late, and then it's like, okay, is it worth my energy? And then I notice I'm not so grown up. I'm going into a child part that is like, bus driver, and then I can move out of that, and then okay, I'm back to my grown up. I just wait for the next bus, and all is good. So that's how I see it a little bit more as a daily practice of how can I meet everything that happens in my daily life from this more availability that you explain, but not as a thing of being there.
And I'm thinking about the way you're describing the process that you take people through, as I hear it. And the way I hear it is that it's very much about sort of looking for what can you say, like the original reason, or like, where does this come from? And I'm curious how you do that, because like in my work and also in my own sort of practice, I find that the things that it's not obvious for me where things come from. And I'm not sure if I even sort of trust that or hold it that way, that there is like a ultimate sort of line to the time when I was in my family constellation, and that leads to me showing up in this way with my partner. like how does that look when you work with people?
I believe strongly that there is a connection in everything that we feel. We won't know everything, but I still believe it exists. And it might be from myself, it might be from my parents, might be intergenerational, it might be something that I picked up from culture. So there can be many different explanations. But I have done so much somatic and constellation work, also in group work, where we do this work. So I've seen so many other people tracing back to the root that it becomes like a language that you can train to become more and more skilled in sensing and feeling where it comes from. But I think an important aspect of it is that the goal is not to figure out and remember what happened and blame the situation. It's more about learning how to trust the feeling and what that part of me would have needed at the time. So say that my partner is not giving me attention or is not supporting me, and I feel, frustrated that he's not there, for example. So if I do a process with myself in that state, then I go into the body, and then I have learned to recognize the different parts in me as well. But I can feel like this is a 4-year-old. I can even sense when it's from birth or if it's pre-verbal, because I have learned through others and through myself to scan and to sense it in the body. So say that, okay, this makes me feel like I'm a 4-year-old and I'm not cared for, and dad is not there, for example. And then the purpose of it isn't like, oh, my dad wasn't there and what did he do, or to kind of resolve the past. It's not about that. It's more about, okay, can I tend to the feeling? I feel like I'm 4 and daddy wasn't there. And in a child's consciousness, that means I'm not loved and I'm alone. It wasn't even true because he was at work. So the child's consciousness is the origin also of our negative thoughts, which is you don't love me, or I'm not good enough, or this is because we don't have bigger capacity when we are small than to create these truths around the situations that's happening. And then when I recognize, then okay, I feel like I'm a 4-year-old. I would have needed somebody to be there. I'm feeling lonely. Then I can learn how to give myself that right now. And then somatically, something in me eases up. So another challenging aspect with this work is that often when we get hijacked by the part or this feeling, we go straight into it, and then I become almost like this angry 4-year-old, and that can be a pattern and a repetitive pattern, and then I end up there all the time, and I'm kind of strengthening that behavior as opposed to actually changing the behavior. And then a lot of people who can become a bit nerdy about parts work, instead they become a little bit schizophrenic, and it's like, no, this is because this part acts this way and this part acts this way, as if you're not responsible for your parts. And from this perspective, it's more learning to make them less active by holding somatically what that part would have needed. So in this example, it would have needed a stable adult who said, you are still loved and I'm here with you. Nothing is dangerous. You will be fine. And maybe I would have needed to cry a little bit. And then the repair would have happened if I was 4-year-old and the situation happened. And then that would have been left in the past. But because of these emotions didn't happen, then it gets stuck and repeats itself over and over. So any different situation might have a cycle of a few different emotions that would have needed to be felt. Something needed to have been expressed. So it could have been expressing a boundary, like don't do this, or it could have been I need to cry, and I need. So we learn to recognize these different aspects, and the beauty of the work is that the more we practice this, the lower the activation in total actually comes. So it's not like I'm just learning to move out of it. I'm actually learning to diminish the activation that is inside. So over time, when the same trigger comes, it becomes smaller and smaller.
Mm.
While if I go do a breath work and I go for a run, it's going to help for the moment, but the next time it comes, it's going to be the same. So I'm not tending to the root when I do just regulation work. So that is also a big difference when you work with it in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that I'm going a little bit into sort of nerdiness that
Let's
might
get
be
nerdy.
taken too far. But let's see. There's something with like how the let's see. I tend to operate from a place of pragmatics. So I'm interested in what works more than what is real.
I
And
like that.
and and that also makes me like when I hear you have this like, are parts real in sort of like because like as I see it, I'm like parts work seems useful. It's useful to talk about parts sometimes. But if I go into sort of a belief that I actually consist of parts, that seems to do something differently, or like there's some kind of risk there. I think you mentioned it yourself. And similarly with this sort of, is it really true that the reason I have this experience right now is that I had this experience as a 4-year-old? Is a different way of holding something, then it might be useful to to do this method
Yeah.
for getting at taking a different approach to what I'm experiencing at the moment. I'm curious how you
I
hold.
would say both of those are true. So on the one side, it is a useful tool, and we get, the more we do the work, the closer and closer we get to the truth. So it takes a capacity to do something and just trust that I'm getting close enough for it to be useful. I'm getting close enough to the truth for it to work. But the more I do the work, the deeper layer I reach. But I believe it is as a truth, the different layers of where it comes from. But it doesn't mean that every time I do the work and I get to where it came from, that is the truth. And it was exactly that. So in those moments, I do it because it works. But I know that the deeper I work, the more of a truer picture I get of myself and where the stuff comes from. And it becomes obvious for me when I work with clients because they have no idea where it comes from. And I can, after speaking to them for a little bit, I can say things about how they grew up, or maybe how their mom was, or was something happening in the family. And they're like, how did you know that? So it's like, well, because I know this is true, because you're having that kind of survival pattern, or this is how you put yourself aside. So you don't put yourself aside for no reason. So something happened when you were small that made you put yourself to the side and prioritize other people. And I cannot say exactly what happened, if it was your mom or your dad, but I can see the patterns. And there's always a reason why we don't stay in our midline. Something happened for us, otherwise we wouldn't have chosen. We became that to survive. And if you want to nerd on it, the Norm book is a very nerdy book, but then that is a way how they explain more theoretically why this is true, if you want to see it from that perspective. But we have to be careful. It doesn't mean that every time we do the work we're getting to the truth. We hold the complexity, and there might be always deeper layers, because you might do the tracing of yourself and you say, oh, this reminds me of when I was 20 and I was left by my ex. And that can be partially true, but underneath that, something else happened when you were 16, and underneath that something happened when you were 10, and underneath that something happened when you were born, and underneath that something happened to your mom before you were, you know. So again, it's not about figuring out what truth, but you take something and then you work with it and you get to a somatic release. That's a sign that it was close enough to something that worked for you to release it.
And what do you mean when you say somatic release? Like, what does that look like?
So from a nervous system perspective, then when energy comes because of something is happening. So let's take a classical example. There is a fire, okay? So I go into fight and flight mode. Either I should go and pull out the fire or I should run away from the fire. And then my body activates, arms, legs, sympathetic activation, to be able to do one of these two things. But then I do neither. I freeze and somebody else comes and carries me, yeah, and then carries me out and they put on the fire. Then I will still have all of this activation in my system. And then after the fire, I'm hyper vigilant because I'm thinking somebody's turning on a lighter, or, you know, because I'm still holding the charge. And when we, through the somatic work, can address where it came from. So, oh, can you remember what it felt like? And the fire started and you froze. What would you have been wanting to do? And then by starting to imagining and move, and I was like, like my mind went, I wanted to, you know, go and get my child. It wasn't maybe about the fire. And then when you will get to release this, what you would have wanted to do, maybe stretching out or running or in the legs, then there's a discharge happening. And the discharge might be crying, it might be sweating, it might be shaking a little bit. If the person after the fire would have been held by somebody and like, the fire is over, your child is safe, everything is fine, the discharge would have happened immediately. They would have moved out of the shock, they would have cried, they would have sweated and like, oh, okay. And then until it releases. So because we don't discharge either through the real action or by being held and supported to release the shock, then it sits in the system. And we can have that from birth, or when I was 1, or when I was 2. And the work that I work with is more closely to developmental trauma, but more from a perspective of we all have it, rather than focusing on super traumatized people. So we create tension every day because my dad easily got, angry. So every time dad was around, I would like tense up a little bit to, you know, be nice. And that tension gets stored up and it creates patterns, thoughts, a personality that you bring out in your life. And if we can access it to where it belongs, actually dad, instead of it is my partner who, you know, wants me harm, and I put it where it belongs, it's an uncoupling, it's called, happening. So I see it's not you, it's not Peter who actually makes me feel this tense that I have to walk on eggshells. It's a memory, and I place it where it belongs with my dad, and we work with it there. That's when the discharge starts to happen.
Cool.
Yeah. And I can reach a discharge also without placing it, but it will come back again. That's the thing. Like when we start to place it where it belongs, we release deeper layers because it's a rewiring of where this pattern first started.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. Like I get into this territory of like, well, embodied tension and identification is kind of overlapping in my world. Like the way I think I have to be in the world, or just the way I am experiencing the world, is kind of connected to how I hold my body and how I'm sensing my body. It seems, for me at least. Yeah. But I also end in this place again where it's like there doesn't seem to be any end to that. Like there's no essential me that is just not tense in any way or is not identified in any way, or at least I'm so far from it that it doesn't make sense to speak of it. It's more like I can clean up more and more of sort of unhealthy ways that is creating suffering for myself or others in the world.
I see that differently. I don't want to, as you say, it's not about claiming like, oh, I have found the real authentic self behind all the parts. But I believe that the more work I do, the closer and closer I come to it. And how I differentiate what would be called the more authentic self underneath these patterns is when I get impulses that comes more from love, from creativity, from spontaneity, as opposed to coming from fear. So people say like, well, if they're a pleaser, it's like, can I not be compassionate if I, as an adult? Like, does it mean I have a pleaser just because I'm kind? And the spontaneous compassion is just natural to a human being, which I would say closer to something that is an authentic self. But if I'm doing it because I'm afraid of what the impact will be if I don't do it, then it's coming from a pattern. And then if I heal my pattern, my capacity to be compassionate is not going to go away. But I'm not going to overdo it more than I have the capacity to. I'm not going to sacrifice myself, so it's coming from a different place. So that is at least what I see as a more authentic self, when you can start to identify that's like, oh yeah, that would be just nice to dance. And then you realize that, oh, underneath I'm actually dancing because I'm running away from my anxiety. So only when I fix my anxiety will I know if I still want to dance. So I was obsessively dancing 5 days a week. I still love dancing, but I don't need to do it 5 days a week. So now I would say it's more an expression of my authentic self, because like, oh, I just feel like dancing sometimes, as opposed to using it as a regulation tool. And it's mixed, so it's not either or. As I said, we come closer and closer to what is something more true, as opposed to like, oh, now I found it. It's like constant peeling off. This is a little bit more true than what I experienced myself to be before.
Yeah, so I guess in my language, I would say I hold myself less tightly, or I'm less contracted in my identifications.
Yeah.
They're still there, but they're not gripping me as much.
And I have a curious question, because in my work, I often ask people, if we don't put word on the tension and we put word on the emptiness, how would you describe that? So you said it's like less tension, less parts. Then what is it?
What that is?
Yeah. That gets more space. If you have less tension, how would you describe what then arises?
I think I would describe it as a silence, an experience of, like, it can almost only be described as an absence in my experience, that it's not something that replaces. It is, and it doesn't actually, and my experience is not that I have gotten over a lot of stuff in my life. It's still there. It's just that I have more space around it, so it doesn't impact me as much. So it's like when I get anxious, I'm not gripped by anxiety in a way where it consumes me, and I don't know, it can last for days or whatever. It's more like there's awareness around the anxiety, and which gives me more agency to be with it in different ways, which in my practice typically is to bring it to the situation that is happening, that is like basically.
And do you have days, a few days where you have no anxiety and things just starts to flow a little bit?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And how would you describe what is happening then?
Well, a lot of things are happening. Like I think I experienced most of my days as moving between a lot of different states, where some of them are more contracted, some of them are less contracted, but I move in and out of these states. depending on how the world impacts me.
Yeah, I see it's quite similar, and I just noticed that I am used to using a language of putting words on this that is, instead of less contracted, I see life or movement or my authentic. I've practiced or chosen, you could say, to what are the positive words as to spell, as to, instead of saying the not anxious or the not tense, like what are those states, and that is what I perceive as life. That is aliveness happening. That is spaciousness. That is the more silent space, and from that silence, life moves, not from the parts, not from strategies, but from life itself, or from who I am, or whatever that would be. And the more I do this work, the more space that, which is difficult to put a name on, drives my life instead of something else.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like some of this is in language, which always makes it a bit tricky to talk about. Like, how do we just use language differently, and do we see things differently? I guess one thing that is important for me here is to honor whatever happens as life. So I'm careful to make something not life, because even when I get anxious or angry or super contracted or into a trigger, I'm like, well, that's an expression of something. And then it also, I would imagine you would say the same, actually, because the work you do is about welcoming that and actually seeing what it has to offer, or what the message is, as I hear it.
For me, life, I think when I use it, it's what's happening here and now. So if here and now I'm expressing anger that belongs to the past, then it's a repetition. It's not like it's life then, as opposed to life now. So if you are very rude to me right now, and I say, that's not okay for me, don't speak to me like that, that is life happening right now. I'm setting a boundary. But if you're trying to be nice, and I interpret that because of my pattern as you being rude, and I get triggered of you, it's an expression of something that is not life right now. It's in the past. So for me, my nerdery is about the differentiation, not necessarily when and what. It's one part of it, but the first part is it's not here. Then if I still don't understand where it comes from, just my acknowledgement that it's from somewhere else, I can start to uncouple. And then I can be more present to life here and now. So the program, the GUMP program, Grow Up Membership program I do, it's not a trauma healing program. It's actually more of an uncoupling program, where we practice what belongs here and what belongs somewhere else. And then I can actually, if I'm not going into the anxiousness, or I'm not good enough, I can be creative and feel like painting here and now. And then it's an expression of life. While if I'm painting because I'm anxious and I'm just doing it to distract myself, then it's a response to something.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that has come up for me quite a few times, which is, the way I've said it before, is like everything can be avoidance. So yeah, as you said, like dancing can be an expression of, oh, this is what I really deeply want to do in this moment, and it can be an expression of not wanting to be with what is happening, so I'm just going to go do my dancing.
And it can be both at the same time.
Yeah, likely also that, or it can be connected at least. And the way I would see it is that I can't actually know if it's one or the other outside of presence. Like at least for myself, the only way I can really consider if I'm in avoidance or not is to notice what's happening right now in myself and see like, what is it like, and be in that, be willing to be in that exploration with myself.
Either that or noticing it afterwards, and then acknowledge to myself like, oh, I thought I was doing it for this reason, but now I can see afterwards as well, and then it helps us to become more aware, as you're saying, in the moment.
I think we're getting close to the hour here. I'm curious if you have any sort of last notes on your work, or just can you create the perfect ending of this conversation?
Can I create the perfect ending of this conversation? I just want to some key things that I take out from this conversation is that when we have a lot of knowledge around this work, like you and me and other people that we are following, we're all looking at the same thing, and the use of what one word means is can hijack us away from actually seeing how similar we are. We have a few different like bypasses, but we're not that different in how in the core beliefs, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's always the interesting and a bit scary part with this kind of work for me, is the way I hold it is that most people are kind of pointing to the same thing, but the fingers pointing look different depending if you do the kind of work you do, or if you do like more authentic relating work, or if you do, I don't know, different kinds of embodiment work. It's like, it's different methods, but they are kind of pointing to the same thing. And then I think there are also significant differences in how we hold it and how we go about it, which is likely also because like the reason that different people are attracted to different practices.
And also that when we are in a different phase, a different nerdery, like you were expressing it, then as teachers, we become a little bit blind, because then we believe that this is the one path and every path has a bypass. And I think it's important to, when you follow a teacher, to see how they're living their life, what kind of relationships they have, how they're dealing with how they live, with money, with simple things about life. Shows also the bypass. It doesn't mean that it's not amazing to dance all the time, but if there's life is still a mess, then you can see like, okay, this is one aspect. And then the more pieces of the puzzles different teachers, get over the years, with the years of experience, then we can see more clearly the bigger picture. So I had people following me when I was super nerd about one thing, and now part of me is like, oh, sorry, like maybe I was a little bit too expressive, believing that was the truth. And I'm looking forward to look back at myself a few years from now, and what are my bypasses now. And some of them I see, but I'm sure there are more of them.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that, because maybe that could be a fun ending. Like, what are you learning right now? Or like, can you see the sort of the thing on the horizon that you're moving towards?
I think in the horizon is like even more slow, even more calm. Because the more I slow down, there is another part of me is like slow down even more. And Lotus, my son, is the perfect mirror, because my kind of ADHD behaviors, fast switching, that has diminished so much. But just from me moving from one thing to another, and he cries, so I'm getting face to face mirror on this too quick shift in my system that I believe still comes from some unresolved activation in my system. And yeah, with paying even more attention in that presence and enjoying the present moment even more, I think people will see me as even more gentle and calm and less of the ecstatic dance Africa Lee that they knew, sexy Lee. She's kind of like becoming Mama Lee. Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Fun exploring this with you, and cool to hear more about your work. And
yeah, lovely.
I'm sure there's loads of detail. Obviously, there's loads of details that we are not even close to getting into. But yeah, it's been interesting.
Another time. Yeah, thank you.